This podcast is brought to you by Consolidation Coach, the leading M&A consulting firm in the collision repair industry.
Hey there, it's Jason Stahl, and we're doing episode 3 of the brand new podcast, Consolidation Nation, sponsored by Consolidation Coach. And once again, I'm with my co-host, Laura Gay, who is the president and CEO of Consolidation Coach. Welcome, Laura.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. And so let's dive right into it. You know, episode 1, we talked about 2025 and what the landscape looks like for consolidation. Episode 2, we talked about beware of wolves in sheep's clothing and how to identify them. And here's episode 3, and we're going to do a deep dive into the numbers, the financials. And as we know, auto technicians, body technicians, collision repair owners, shop owners, they love cars. They're great at fixing cars. They're not necessarily the best with numbers. And neither am I, frankly. I failed math in grade school and college and high school and up here. So, so let's talk about the numbers. Talk to me a little bit about when a shop owner is ready to sell, what they could be looking at as far as, you know, their shop's numbers, the revenue, the gross profit, the net profit, all those kind of numbers, EBITDA. And then what they can expect when they sell as far as getting the maximum dollars and the offers they might receive from a buyer. And I know that's a lot to cover on this episode, but let's just start where you want to start, Laura, and simplify this down for us.
Yeah, sure. Great. No problem. So when you're thinking about selling your shop, one of the biggest things that you need to consider is And a lot of people think, oh, I just want to sell my shop. But you just can't go and jump in the swimming pool without first checking the water. You know, is the water, 60 degrees, or is the water, 85 degrees and ready to be jumped into? And some of those things that you want to do beforehand is, make sure that you're selling the shop post sale, that you can live the same life or better that you're living right now. The whole idea is quality of life, and a lot of folks, they sell their shop and then they end up, having to get a second job, or maybe doing something that they really didn't want to do because they have to do it. The idea for most folks that are selling their shop is, they want to sell the shop to either not work or do something that they want to do, something they have passion for. That's pretty much where I'm at. I'm doing this not because I have to, but because I want to. And I think it's important to really think about what that net money to you is going to look like post sale. And I think that, it's one of those things, you can't put the cart before the horse. You've got to get the horse and then get the cart. So the first thing is to understand the value of your business. Understand your real estate and what, your exit is going to look like on that. And then understand what the tax consequences are going to be on your particular sale. And then understand what, that picture, if you will, of what your life can look like post sale if you sell. And sometimes that picture is not pretty. Being completely transparent. And sometimes that picture is amazing and it's something that, you're ready to act on. So I think that's the first thing that you have to think about. Then when you think about, values of shops, and this is a really touchy topic, and it's hard to really nail down or really talk about. I mean, we need hours and hours and hours to talk about this. So it's hard to really cover it fully on a podcast. But we see values on shops, and when we're doing, business valuations ourselves for our clients, we see values anywhere from 30 cents on the dollar to $1.20 on the dollar. Meaning that if your shop sales were and I'm just using this for easy math, were $1 million, we see sale prices from $300,000 to $1.2 million. That's a pretty big swing, if you will, so it's easy, in that scenario to leave money on the table. So I had a gentleman just call me yesterday that had a letter of intent that unfortunately The deal fell apart and he was looking for guidance. And after he and I talked through the existing deal that he had, it really was a blessing that the deal fell apart because in his case, in his market, his deal was about 80 cents on the dollar for a single location. And in his market, the single locations are bringing more like 90 cents on the dollar to 100% on the dollar. And additionally, his lease, he left about $3,000 a month in lease income on the table. So, as we talked about on prior podcast, I think the episode 2, if you leave just $1,000 a month on the table over a 10-year time, that equates $100,000. You wouldn't want to make $100,000 mistake, not today, not ever, not on anything. So in that case, that would have been a $300,000 mistake plus the mistake on the sale price of the business. And quite honestly, I can understand where he felt like he did really good, but that's where the lack of knowledge of not knowing what's going on in particular markets, where some markets are just absolutely nuts. And, there's other markets in the country that are on the opposite end of the spectrum. And I think that's a really important thing to really understand. And unfortunately, there's no way to really capture that information, on your own because there is no, MLS. The MLS is where most people go, like if they're trying to sell their home or or go to LoopNet, there's no like place that you can go and find out what these deals are trading for. It's really from people that are in the grind that can tell you what these other deals are selling for. And it's not somebody that's doing, 1 or 2 deals, 3 deals a year. It's somebody that's doing, 20 plus deals a year that can answer that truthfully and is staying in touch with all the consolidators and understanding what markets they're wanting to buy in and understanding, for lack of better words, all the chess pieces that are moving around because it literally is a soap opera. I mean, literally, as soon as I think I know what's going on and this is happening, then another chess piece moves in, so it is a very dynamic industry that has a lot of changes, truthfully, almost monthly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to go back to something we said in a previous episode of this podcast, and you talked about the maturation of these consolidators from tiny tots to full-grown mature adults now. And you mentioned that they all have their own personality. That's very interesting. The crash champions, the classics, they all have they have a different personality. And that kind of guides their acquisition strategy. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I think a really good example of this, and I hope I do a good job of explaining this because obviously I don't work for Quality Collision Group, but they're a good example of a very unique model. A lot of, they talk to a lot of shops. We bring a lot of shops to them to look at, to buy, but honestly, they're very discerning. They're looking for a certain type of shop. And they're looking for shops that are very OEM certified centric. They are looking for shops that are delivering a very high quality of repair, technicians that are very certified. They're looking for shops that are ICAR Gold. They're looking for shops in larger, markets, affluent markets. And I hope I did that justice. I hope Jared Guerin is the CEO of Quality. And I really admire, the model that they're doing. But that's a real good example. And Vive, which is in the Northeast, they are pretty unique too. They have a similar model to Qualities, but they're really focused in the Northeast, pretty much, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and then up that Northeast corridor. So it's really interesting, how, they're regional, and then you've got, Caliber and, uh, Caliber and Gerber, who are kind of like Burger King and McDonald's. They're across the United States. They're everywhere, right? I travel a lot, and it's funny. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter where I'm at. They're there. They're like a McDonald's. They're like a Burger King. They're on every corner. So it is interesting to see all of their different dynamics. And that's just the ones that we that we know of, that we talk about. Joe Hudson, they have a very much mom and pop feel. They're very much about buying these mom and pop shops. That's their vibe. That's who they are. I think that's a very unique. They're all very unique in their own model. Classic Collision, again, another very unique model. They are very thoughtful about the type of shops that they're looking for. They're seeking shops that are iCar goals. Again, in certain markets, they're really certainly seeking more so than in other markets. They're looking for shops, that have a really good, we'll just say market knowledge. People know about them, have good Google and Yelp reviews and such, and absolutely iCar Gold. So again, I just think each one of them are very unique, no different than we as people. We all are all very different. We like different things. And all of the CEO and leadership of all of these consolidators, they have their own ideas and things on how they want to do things. And it's awesome because, there's literally, a pair of shoes in the closet really for every buyer. And when we start talking to a client, we really kind of know who is their buyer before we even get to tell them, or even when we get to the table. And obviously we don't really know until, the offers come in and we get into the full on negotiation and get the best deal for our client. But, a lot of times, when a client calls us and we talk to them, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this shop is perfect for this one or that one. Like I already kind of have it in my mind because I know everyone's model and what they're looking for, even right down to all of the PE people. And on that note, the private equity, they're looking, all of them have their own little, we'll call it niches, markets, feel, vibe, whatever you want to call it. They all have their own little thing that they're looking for as well. And so again, it just comes down to they're all very unique.
That's interesting, and I think you just showed a great example of what Consolidation Coach can do for body shops, because you guys know the market and you know these players and you know their personalities. So that's a great example of another thing you bring to the table, Laura. I wanted to go back to the value of a shop, and we hear often that shop owners oftentimes have a overinflated sense of what the value of their shop is. For example, I have $1 million shop, so I'm going to sell for $1 million easy. And we know that's not the case. Usually it's way overinflated in their mind. And so talk to me a little bit about that again, and the reality, the harsh reality or the sobering reality they run into sometimes when they're ready to sell, but the money is not what they thought it would be.
So again, this is a very broad answer. And, a lot of shop owners, honestly, it's timing. It's, if the consolidators are in your market and they're ready to buy up shops in that market, the deals typically can be something that you can't pass on, you can't say no to. But if you are in a market where that maybe there's just not a lot of activity, and there's just not a lot of buyers, or there's just not a big demand, if you will, that's when you see that dynamic, where, maybe, it's, I always talk about God's time, you know what I mean? And, maybe it's not God's time for the deal to happen. Maybe it's something, we have a really, really nice guy that's got a shop out in Texas. Then he's been our client for over 2 years. And we've been telling him, look, be patient. We know some different things that are happening. And once the consolidation, that wheel that we talked about earlier, that wagon wheel or hub and spokes, where, it continues to develop out off of that main city. Once it gets to your city, they're going to be all over you. Well, now here we are 2.5 years later, and he's got a deal, and he's got a really nice shop, and he's got a deal, and it's a very favorable deal. But we just had to wait for that area or that time to develop, you know what I mean? So that we could get a really good deal together. So sometimes it might be your time, but it might not be the time. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I don't know why, Laura, but I just thought of a great analogy, and maybe you can back me up if this is a good analogy. Selling a home. Oftentimes we think, well, I want to sell it myself because I don't want to give all that commission to a real estate agent. But we know when we really think about it intelligently, it's probably not a good idea for us to take on the selling of our home. And it's probably the same with a shop, right? A body shop owner might say, well, I don't want to, I want to make as much as I can, and i.e. not pay a broker, so I'm going to figure this out myself. But it's highly inadvisable for all the reasons we've heard about in these podcasts we've done and all the things that you have said, correct?
So I feel like selling your house and selling your business is two totally different things. I feel like selling your house, honestly, that's something you can do on your own. You know what I mean? If you've got, a good understanding of what the market, bears, what the value is of your house, you know what I mean? A range, if you will, you know what I mean? I think it's something that you can do because there's just not a whole lot of moving parts. And with your attorney, you can get through that. But I think selling your business, you absolutely need to have representation. You need someone that understands the industry, that you are in, and you need somebody that this is all they do. Because what happens is, like I said before, if you just leave $1,000 a month alone, just $1,000 a month alone in rent on the table, like you just, you accept 10,000 when you should have had 11,000, for example, that's $100,000 over a 10-year time. That money right there alone would have paid your consulting fee in most cases. So it's really foolish. There's really not a fee. You're really not paying anything. We're going to find you money, and we're going to get you more money. We're going to help you realize a much better negotiated lease. We're going to help you with your tax allocations, assuming, and on that, we should talk about the taxes for a minute. We're going to help you understand the taxes and all the moving parts of that. And I want to preface this. We are not CPAs, but we do enough of this that we understand all the moving parts. And then we can give that information to you to take to your accountant to come up with good estimates and have discussions pre-gaming, so that we're all on the same page to ultimately land you the best net dollars. And these are things, quite honestly, that are so many moving parts. You can't possibly get in front of this if this is not something you do all the time. We've done, now well over 130 transactions, as a company, and that's a lot. And through all of those, we've worked with a lot of different professionals. We've got a tax consultant that's on our team that helps clients, especially shop owners that are a C corporation, which selling your business, a C corporation, is the kiss of death. That we can help those people with the selling process and help them, get a much better net return than what they would get on their own. So honestly, I don't think as a fee. It's really it is us helping you, and it's making you money, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? There is no fee. It's making you money. It's more of having someone help you through the process. I hate to use the term, a best friend holding your hand through the process, but that's really what we are. We tell you what's the page that's happening, what's going to happen. It's kind of like having a book read to you and you knowing what the page is before it actually turns, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Laura. I think that's a wrap on episode 3. We talked about we were going to do a deep dive into numbers, but to your point, there was so much to cover on the numbers end. Maybe we waited in the baby pool, and maybe we'll keep going on this at another episode and to dive into the deep quarry. But I think there's kind of there's great information on the numbers. And this next episode, we're going to tee it up here. We're going to say that we are going to enter the mind of the buyer. We're going to look at what they wear. We're going to look at what cologne they put on. We're going to look at their hairstyle. We're going to get into the mind of the buyer and literally become their physical being and talk like a buyer and come at this whole consolidation activity from the mind of a buyer. Does that sound good?
That sounds awesome. And that's the whole idea of this podcast, is to really try to put some education out there that's fresh, that's new, and really relative to what's going on right now in consolidation.
Yes. And so thank you again, Laura, for co-hosting with me today. Awesome. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
So long.